Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see me. Hopefully you can hear me. This is today's webinar, Website Design Essentials to Boost Engagement and Conversion. My name is Andy Leach. I am the tech champion here at the Digital Culture Network, specialist in websites. I'm just going to give a minute or two for latecomers to arrive. I will self-describe. I am a white man in my 50s. I have short graying hair, glasses, and a trimmed beard. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this webinar. I hope you are too. I've had a lot of fun putting it together. There's a lot to get through. We're going to kick off with a bit of housekeeping. So before we get started, those of you who have attended these webinars before will know the drill. The webinar is going to last for around about an hour. We're going to have a section for Q&A, if I can stay on track, at the end. We have closed captions available. You can click the CC button. Behind the scenes, we have Maria, who is doing those bespokely for you. BSL interpretation this morning is provided by Naomi and Isabel. Thank you for being on board. The recording of this webinar will be available on our website in about a week. All attendees will get an email notifying them when that has been published. It'll be available in the Knowledge Hub area of our website. You can use the Q&A button to ask any questions, which I'll hopefully be answering towards the end. My buddy James is in the wings. He is the tech champion for data analytics. James, do you want to pop your head over and say hello?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm James. I'm one of the tech champions. I've got brown hair. It's getting longer now. I've got my green t-shirt today, white man, early 40s. So yeah, I'll be manning the chat. So if you have questions, put them in the Q&A section and then we'll get to them at the end. So you'll see me at the end again. Bye.
Thanks, James. I couldn't have a more credible and reliable tech champion in the wings than James to look after me. Feel free to say hello in the chat. We're about 2 minutes past 10 now, so hopefully everybody is there. But by all means, select everyone from the chat and say hello and introduce yourselves and where you are from. A little bit about our service for those of you who perhaps haven't come across us previously, or maybe this is your first webinar. We are an Arts Council funded programme. Our remit, our mission, if you like, is to upskill the arts and culture sector in terms of digital skills. We have a team of tech champions who do that, and you can go to this form on our website, which is available via the Get in Touch button. So that's digitalculturenetwork.org.uk. Complete that form, and we will be in touch to arrange a one-to-one support call with you. And it's all free if you are within the sector, so nothing to lose. There is the team waiting to help you with all of your digital challenges. Okay, so when I've done webinars in the past, the feedback has been generally pretty positive. However, I have been accused of trying to cram too much in, so I'm going to apologize in advance. There is a lot for us to get through this morning. The agenda is broken down into 5 manageable chapters that's covering brand and messaging, fonts and colors, content and layout, navigation, and conversion. Within each of these chapters, there are 2 quick tips which you can take away and implement on your own websites to make improvements. We're looking to try and build engagement and increase conversion. That is the goal. I've got a little introduction first I'd like to go through. So why do we have a website? I'm just going to pose that question for a moment. Obviously, it's going to be different to those of you who are attending today because you're in different types of organizations. Some of you might be individual artists, etc. Your audience are all going to be different, but I've tried to distill down the purpose of a website for the sector into this next slide. Your website exists to fulfill organizational objectives and build trust with your audiences. Now, if you are an individual artist out there, you can remove organizational and you can put in personal, fulfill personal objectives and build trust with your audiences. So that is not perfect for everyone, but I think as a general rule of thumb, that's the guidance for this morning. Now, I do a lot of work with a lot of organizations. I speak to, I guess, between 10 and 12 organizations each week. Quite often they'll come to me to say, we've got a website we're not happy with, or we need to replace the website. What should we do? I help them with that, support them through that process, but what I also do is refer them to Ollie and Jack on our team. So Ollie is our specialist for digital strategy, and Jack is our specialist for audience data. Because in order to develop a great website, you need to have the fundamentals in place. You need to have make sure that it's adhering to your broader digital strategy. If you don't have a strategy, Ollie can help you develop one. If you do have a strategy, Ollie can help you then refine it and be a critical friend. Jack also can help you sharpen an understanding of your audiences. This is absolutely vital. All the content that you put on your website, all of your copy, it's all got to resonate with your audience. So the strategy and the audience are two of the foundations for the website, but not just the website, for anything that you're doing from a marketing perspective, anything you're doing on social media, any advertising you're doing, email marketing, etc. So that will give you a really strong foundation. So I think James is going to pop a link in the chat to their booking links so you can have a conversation with them. I'm going to kick off with a poll. Now, this was a poll that was undertaken a few years ago by the Stanford Web Credibility Research Report. They had 12 criteria by which they asked people to vote which of those criteria most boosts the credibility of your website. Now, I've reduced that down to just four this morning. And the four are, well, you can see them on screen actually. So which one do you consider to be the most important in terms of credibility for your website? So I'll give you a moment to complete that, and I will take a glug of my weak squash, which is sat beside me here. Great to see so many of you contributing to this. Thank you very much. So the leader seems to be make your site easy to use. I'll give you another few seconds. Count you down from five. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay, so the winner by some clear distance is make your site easy to use and useful, which is really, really interesting. I think I would probably have ticked that as well. And I'm actually from a design background, but what really astonished me was 46% of people judged website credibility by visual design, and that was the most popular criteria. That really kind of amazed me. And really provided the impetus for this whole presentation today. So we're really focusing on visual design and yeah, let's see where this goes. So to conclude, users care as much about how a website looks as to how it works. So let's tackle that through these 5 chapters. I'm going to kick off with brand and marketing. I'm just keeping an eye on the time so I don't overrun horribly. Okay, so for those of you who've got some kind of marketing experience, this will seem very obvious to you. This is to do with branding consistency. I'm quite surprised how many organizations and artists I come across who are not applying this basic principle to their marketing. So brand consistency is very important because it builds recognition, loyalty, and trust across all of the channels that you're using to promote your practice or your organization. So that's both online and offline. And this is quick tip number 1. So online, we're looking at websites, social media channels, email marketing, advertising, and video content. Offline, we're considering print, so leaflets, posters, flyers, advertising, merchandise, PR, and any signage that you might have. There needs to be a consistent visual thread across everything that you do in order to build recognition, loyalty, and trust. Okay, so I've got an example here of an organization in Boston called Artists for Humanity. This is their homepage. Looks very nice and presentable. Got the nice black and white photography. It's got the Artists for Humanity logo rendered there in white, and they're using this kind of distinctive yellow text and spot color. However, let's look at their Instagram page. Now, I'm having to work quite hard to understand that this is the same organization. So it's creating what's called cognitive load. It's making me think we don't really want that. We want things to be very easy and obvious and frictionless for our customers and our audiences. So you can see that they're using orange. The logo looks different. Visually, there's a bit of a disconnect. So I would say that that is something that could be improved. So if any of you are blushing slightly and think, well, do you know what? That's true for my website or my brand, then that's something you can look at. Here is another example. This is for Chai Wallers, UK organisation based in Bristol. So they're using this black and white colour scheme. They've got this very distinctive kind of logo and font that they're using alongside the logo. If I go to their Instagram page, you can see immediately it's very obvious to me that this is the same organisation. I'm not having to scratch my head and think. So that's really, really important. So brand consistency, that goes beyond your website. That's something that you can take away and look at throughout your promotional stuff. Okay, quick tip number two within this section is to include some simple text explaining who you are and what you do, specifically on your homepage using plain English and no jargon. Now, the homepage, I mean, you can look at your analytics to back this up. Your homepage tends to be the gateway to your website. It's where most people are arriving to experience your website. Okay. So I've got a couple of examples here, and it surprises me how many, when I do website audits for organizations, how few organizations communicate clearly what they do on their homepage. They make the assumption that everybody already knows who they are. So we don't want people rooting through about pages to try to understand what you do. We need that to be upfront on your homepage. You've got a very limited opportunity to set out your stall. Okay, I've got a couple of nice examples here. So this is the Art House. Did some work, did some support work with them last year. So I'm just going to read out their statement. The Art House provides time, space, and support for artists, makers, and creative businesses to develop their practice. It is a place where artists and audiences of all kinds are welcome to come together and engage with the creative process through a year-round program of exhibitions and events. Follow us on social media and join our mailing list to stay up to date. Really pithy, simple. It's not like they're trying to write a funding application. It's plain English and it communicates to me immediately what they do. So gold star to the Art House. And that is the text on screen. Another organisation, Yorkshire Youth and Music. They've got a really nice and short statement on their screen, which is, we improve the lives of young people in a range of very challenging circumstances through music and arts-based opportunities. So that's very upfront on their homepage. And, you know, it communicates what they do, and it's kind of encouraging me to explore further and to understand exactly what it is that they do. So that's chapter one. The second chapter we're going to look at is fonts and colors. So quick tip number three, choose fonts and colors with care. Think about your brand or your identity, legibility and accessibility. So you may be planning a new website, or you may be, if you're an individual artist without very much money, you might be doing a website yourself. So you need to think very carefully about the fonts and colors that you are selecting. So a bit of a typography 101 here. So we've got three blocks of text on screen here, three different typefaces. We've got Proxima Nova, which is a sans serif face. In the middle, we've got Caslon Pro, which is a serif typeface. And on the right, we've got Futura, which again is a sans serif typeface. You notice they are all 16 pixels in size. And this is the general recommendation for body copy on your website. So if you're getting feedback that the text on your website is quite small, then make sure that it is at 16 point. You should be able to control that yourself through your content management system. Okay. Now, what do I mean by serif and sans serif for those of you who aren't sure? So on the left, we've got an example of a sans serif font. And on the right, we've got an example of a serif font. So an example of a sans serif font would be Arial or Helvetica or Univers. And a serif font would be something like Times New Roman or Bodoni. So you can see they're a little bit different. And what is a serif? It's those little ornamental feet that you get on all the letter forms on the typeface. And that is the serif. And that is the difference between them. Now, I don't want to upset any designers who may be watching, but as a very, very general rule of thumb, sans serif fonts provide a contemporary modern feel, whereas serif fonts tend to have more of a traditional and formal kind of feel. So that's a very, very broad overview of serif and sans serif fonts. So something to think about when you're selecting typography for your website. So many Many people I speak to on calls will be using what's called a theme. So a theme is a set of templates, which is a way of cheaply and rapidly developing a website. So you might be using WordPress, you might be using Squarespace or Wix. Many of them will have something like this, which is a means for you to experiment with combinations of color and text. Okay. And in this example, which is Squarespace, the themes are broken down by professional, playful, and sophisticated. So you can select those themes, see how it works with your content. Obviously, select something that you like personally, but more importantly, which typeface, which color scheme is going to resonate most closely with your audience. Okay, so that's very, very important to think about. Right, we're going to look at a little bit of text legibility here. I've got three blocks of copy on screen, A, B, and C. I would like you, please, to jump into the chat and just select A, B, or C in terms of which you think is the most accessible and legible on screen. Becky, Melanie, oh my gosh, there are so many of you. I can't even read your names. Everyone's going for C, almost without exception. Does nobody think A or B? A couple of Bs. Okay. I can see we've got a very educated audience here, but just to put you all out of your misery, the only block that conforms with accessibility guidelines and hence is considered sufficiently legible is block number C. And that is because the contrast between the color that's been chosen to render the font and the background has got sufficient contrast. So you might be thinking, well, how do I know? How can I make a judgment on that? Well, fortunately, there are contrast checkers that you can check online. James is going to put an example of one into the chat. This is WebAIM. So very simply, you put in your text color and you put in your background color, and it will give you a judgment on what your contrast ratio is. And if it's green, as in this example, then you are accessible. If you're not accessible, then you can use the sliders on this little widget to find an accessible alternative. So that's a good way of checking the contrast of your typography on your website. Okay, quick tip number 4 within this section, give generous space to the text on your website. And we're going to do this by adjusting two parameters, line height and line length. Most content management systems will allow you to adjust these. If you've had your site professionally designed, it might be that the agency or the supplier has locked these down to safeguard the appearance of your text. You'll need to speak to them if you need to make any adjustments. But let's take a look at this. So I've got three blocks of text on screen, A, B, and C. Now, the line length, just to explain what that is, very simply, that is the number of letters or characters in your line of text before it wraps onto the next line, okay? So that's the line length. So A is quite long, B is quite short, B is in the middle, and B is considered to be the perfect kind of like the sweet spot. So that's 50 to 75 characters in that line of copy before it wraps onto the line below. Okay, there are all kinds of studies on this. They've done lots of user testing, and this is very much considered to be an industry standard now. There it is, highlighted in green. So that's line width or line length. And what about line height? So line height, very simply, is the vertical distance between your lines of copy, as indicated on this screen. Be generous with your line height. So I've got two blocks of copy here, A and B. I'd like you to jump in the chat, please. Which one do you think is more legible on screen? I'm very impressed, I've got to say. Look at this. Okay, so I think you're all pretty correct there. It is B. A is just too congested, whereas B's got breathing space and it's that much easier to read. So something for you to think about when you are managing your website content. Um, so yeah, there's a parameter for this, which is line height. So that's what you need to look for in your content management system. So on the left, it's a line height of 1.0. B is 1.5, which is, I think, the optimum for accessibility text on screen. So make sure your text has breathing room. And here's an example where you can see they've decided to reduce the text to the right-hand side, leaving lots of white space on the left, but that's no bad thing because white space in design is a good thing and not a bad thing. Don't feel you have to cram everything into your web pages. And you can see they're adhering to the line width and the line height. So that is a good example, a benchmark. And even if it's a visual page, and this is an example from the Design Museum, you can see this text panel here is similarly adhering to that same principle, 50 to 75 characters and a line height of a bit, 1.4, 1.5. Okie doke, quick time check. Content and layout. This is the third chapter in this presentation. This is an interesting study that came out last year. It's the Digital Experiences Benchmark Study from Content Square. Website consumption rates have dropped by 6.5% in 2025. And this has been measured by the number of pages people are looking at and also the time spent on websites. There are lots and lots of reasons for this, and that would be almost a webinar in itself. But there's a couple of things I'm going to flag up. One is concentration span. Generally, I think that is dropping. Also, it could be argued that websites are becoming more efficient, and with the with organic traffic kind of being reduced in recent times, landing pages and advertising are driving people directly to the pages that they want, and hence they're not spending so much time on websites. But I think the takeaway for this presentation is we need to work a lot harder to make our websites easy to consume and engaging. Okay, so that's something we're going to look at over the following slides. So tip number 5, reduce the effort needed to understand your content. Okay. Now I'm about to show you somebody's face. Does anybody know who this man is? If you do, please put his name in the chat. I'm going to just give you a moment. It's all gone eerily quiet. I wouldn't really expect anybody to know who this guy is, but I am going to doff my cap to him today. His name is Jakob Nielsen, and since the mid-90s, he has dedicated himself to understanding how people interact with websites. He does this through white papers, studies, and endless rounds of user testing. I think it's fair to say that he, perhaps more than anyone, has helped to shape how website content is formatted and designed on screen. Okay. So really, really interesting fellow. I think James might be putting a link to his biog in the chat there. For anybody who wants to learn more about Jakob Nielsen, he's written some fantastic books about website usability. So if this is an area of interest to you, go away and check him out. So one of the innovations that he pioneered is the retinal scanning. So this is eyeball tracking of websites. So this graphic you're looking at here is 3 websites, and it is showing through his studies how people are using websites. So the red areas on this heat map is where people are spending most of their time looking, and then going down to the yellow and then to the blue, and the bits that aren't colored is where people are spending no time looking, as you'd expect, because they're blank. So this is quite an interesting idea, and a lot of web designers will factor this into their designs. You can see this kind of F pattern that's starting to form. So people are looking from the top down, and you can notice that their interest is waning the deeper they go into their pages. So that's something to think about. Get your important stuff at the top of your pages. And then they're looking to the right-hand side, following links and headings, etc. What's interesting is when this study was done on Arabic, then the exact same thing was flipped around. People who read right to left rather than left to right. So it is very much a universal study. So taking that on board, we're now going to do a little exercise. We've got a load of text here, which I've dumped into this browser window. And you can see it's fairly congested. It's a bit like we looked at earlier. It's difficult to penetrate. It's difficult to read. So we're just going to take some really, really simple steps to improve the design of this page. The first thing we're going to do is enter in some paragraphs. And immediately there's a sense of relief. It feels more digestible already. And then as a second step, we're going to adhere to the rule of line length. So that's 55 to 70 characters. You can see that's been kind of truncated down. Then we're going to add in some headings. And immediately it's starting to feel much easier to scan and to read. And when I'm doing audits for people, I'll often pull them up on the fact that their copy is very dense and they're not using headings and they're not breaking it up. A step further, we can put in some bullet lists. We can put in some numbered lists just to pull out key points and again make it that much easier to digest. And we can highlight text and make those audiences make those related pages very, very clear. And then, of course, this isn't necessarily an exercise in aesthetics. It's more an exercise in legibility. So you can obviously add images, quotes, statistics, graphic panels, embedded video, anything that you need to do to make your content really, really engaging. But if you've got basic text content, adhere to those rules and you'll find that people will dwell on your site longer than they would do. Here's an example from Rambert Dance Company where they have followed this kind of best practice. So it's really simple and easy to scan the page. And this is how it appears similarly on mobile devices. Okay, now quick tip number 6 is something of a tangent. I've included it because it is very much a hot topic in our sector, and that is AI overview. So quick tip number 6 is getting your content noticed in AI overviews. Now, some of you might be thinking, what on earth is he talking about? What's an AI overview? So here we go. This is a Google search results page. I have entered the query, who are the Digital Culture Network? So Google's AI algorithms are now drawing from multiple sources to pull back an attempted answer to that question, which is positioned here. And this is the AI overview. And this has been in place in our sector for about 9 months now. And a lot of people are reporting drops in their organic traffic. And that is because people are getting the information they need directly on this page and not actually needing to go to your website. So it's really important that you get your content within these AI overviews. And if, in this case, the Digital Culture Network, you can see we've got a nice kind of branded link on the right-hand side. So how on earth do we get our content into these AI overviews? Well, people tended to search using questions more frequently, and what AI overviews are attempting to do is to answer those questions. So using the example that we've gone through, here is a heading on this page. Where is a good place to learn to dance in Leeds? So if someone were to ask that question, this page stands a chance of being considered for what follows. So where is a good place to learn to dance in Leeds? And there is the AI overview. So if we're posing and answering that question in our text, then we've got a chance of appearing. So FAQs are a really, really good thing to consider adding to your website, even within individual sections. Now, I'm conscious that I've skated over that rather, and I would recommend that you have a conversation with my colleague Monica, who is our search engine optimization specialist, and she is increasingly being asked about AI overview. So hopefully I've just opened up the conversation. James, if you could put a link to Monica's booking form into the chat, that would be appreciated. So yeah, that's quick tip number 6. I thought that was well worth including. Timing's looking okay. A lot of you pasting into the chat. Forgive me, I don't actually look at the chat while I'm presenting. I find it quite difficult. James is a master. He can do that. He can multitask. For myself, I just need to stay focused, so forgive me. If you do have questions, obviously, please pop them into the Q&A and I will do my best to answer them towards the end of this presentation. Okay, the 4th chapter, navigation. This could definitely be a webinar in itself. This is a huge topic. I am going to run a poll now. This poll is, what percentage of users stop engaging with a website because of poor navigation? James, if you would mind launching that poll. Is it 15%, 26%, 41%, or 57%? Okay, I'm just going to give you a moment to complete that. What percentage of users stop engaging with a website because of poor navigation? Okay, so it looks like, just give you another couple of seconds. It looks like 57% is the winner. There we go. 57% is the winner. You're an educated bunch. That is completely true. This was a UX industry um, report. It's prompting me to share the results, if you can see that. Apologies if I didn't share the result of the first poll. So 50% of users stop engaging. There's the poll again. It won't go away. 57% of users stop engaging with a website because of poor navigation. So that is a UX industry statistics report last year. So the takeaway here is it's really, really important to get your website navigation right. Okay, and that leads me to quick tip number 7. Reduce navigation to focus on what is really important. Don't overwhelm with too many options. There is a whole level of psychology around this. There is a law called Hick's Law. If you're really interested in this, you can Google to find out about. It's that idea of when you're asking people to make decisions, if you give them too many choices, it becomes difficult for them to make that decision. So in terms of top level navigation, the recommended sweet spot is 5 to 7 options. Okay. So if you find your top level navigation has got many more than that, then there's a conversation to be had about whether that's really being effective for you. So I've got an example here. When I did this rehearsal with the team, I picked on one or two um, organizations in the sector, and they said, you can't do that, it's unkind. So what I've done instead is I've picked a website outside the sector, and this is the Premier League's fantasy football website. I don't know if any of you play fantasy football. They have a fantastic web app, or rather mobile app, but their website leaves something to be desired. And that's because when I arrive at the website, first of all, I've got 2 navigation systems to look at. I've got the top one, which has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 options. And then I've got the secondary navigation, which has got 14 options. So my head is reeling, I'm spinning. Where on earth do I go? So this is an example, I would say, of how not to do your navigation. There are far too many options. If you're looking at this and it resonates with your own organization, then yeah, we need to have a conversation because you've got far too many options in your navigation. I see this happening quite a lot, and often it's because sections get added, often in times of high priority, excuse me, or different departments demand to have their own top level section, but it's actually undermining the objectives of the organization as a whole. And this is how the site renders on mobile. So 14 options, you're having to swipe for ages to get to what you want. And when we activate the top level navigation, we've got a whole scrolling list of something like 15, 16, 17 options, which is just far too many. So this tip is around reducing your top level navigation options. So in contrast, let's take a look at the British Museum. So the British Museum, they're quite a large organization. You can bet that they've spent a lot of time and effort coming up with their navigation. They've probably done a lot of testing and a lot of surveying, and they've come up with a navigation which is nice and simple, consisting of just 6 options: visit, exhibitions and events, collection, learn, membership, and support us. And you can see they've indicated with a little white circle and the down arrow which sections have got lots and lots of content below them. If we look at that on mobile, one of the things I like about their use of the mobile here, they actually put menu next to what is called the burger menu. So the burger menu, well, hold that thought. We're going to come back to that. It activates the navigation. You can see there are the 6 options, nice and clear, nice and simple, no jargon, and yeah, no cognitive load. You don't literally have to think while you're navigating the site, which is what we're looking for. Okay, quick tip number 8. Navigation labels should be clear, familiar, and concise. Use words that your audience understand. So this sounds quite obvious, doesn't it? However, I come across a lot of organizations in the sector who are using terminology in a navigation that the audience won't necessarily understand. Quite often that's to do with it being internally focused rather than thinking about their audiences. Okay. Sometimes it's to do with a piece of work or a campaign which they understand, but somebody who's new to the site won't. So your navigation labeling is absolutely critical to get right. Okay. I've got a nice example here. This is the Tate. They've got 5 top-level navigation options, most of them comprising a simple single word. What's on, visit, art, learn, and shop. So as a user, as a customer, it's really, really simple and easy for me to digest that navigation. And my first experience of the site is not trying to unpick what the navigation is and what it might potentially link to. Okay, so navigation is really, really crucial. Now, I mentioned I've got one more example actually. Reimagine Redditch. Apologies to Mike, I've added this in at the 11th hour. They're an organization that we've worked closely with in recent times, and they are a CCP based in Redditch, so they're providing community art in that area. And you can see they've got a really simple navigation at the top comprising 7 elements: about, what's on, projects, news, get involved, newsletter, and contact. So nice and simple. If you've got many, many more navigation options than that, as I say, then let's discuss that and work out what we can do to help. Okay, I mentioned burger menus earlier. Some of you may be familiar with the phrase burger menus. What on earth does it mean? They are, in simple terms, the 3 little lines that you get if you're using a mobile phone to navigate the internet. It's the 3 little lines that you click to activate your menu. So it's called a burger menu because it looks a bit like a burger. And it works brilliantly on mobile because, you can't have your navigation on screen the whole time because it takes up so much space. But what I've started seeing, it's becoming quite commonplace actually, are burger menus appearing on desktop and tablet views. Now, there's 2 schools of thought to this. The first is having your navigation hidden like that reduces clutter and makes the site a little bit cleaner. Okay. The counter argument to that is that you're hiding the navigation and you're making it difficult for people to access it, even though it's just a click of a mouse. That is one extra thing that you need to do. Okay, so it's an interesting topic. I think I would probably fall into the second category. I actually think burgers are brilliant on screen, on mobile, not so much on desktop. So this example from Impact Dance, they've got a nice clean masthead there, haven't they? But I've got to click that burger menu to access navigation. I've got another example here. This is South London Gallery. Now, back in the day, I used to be a designer and a creative, and I quite like this site because it's trying to do something different. It's trying to break the mold a bit. So the navigation is placed on the right hand side, which is unusual. Usually navigation is placed on the left or the top. And you can see what they've done. They've rotated the well-known burger menu by 90 degrees, which arguably makes it slightly more difficult to understand. But I've included this as a slight curiosity, and I think there is space for the mold to be broken. But what we mustn't do is compromise the ease of use of our website. So a bit of an honourable mention for South London Gallery. Okay, the BBC. Now, this whole argument, should I have a burger menu on desktop or shouldn't I? So I'm not sure I can think of an organisation that has a higher range of content and a more multi-layered structure of content than the BBC. Hundreds and thousands, if not millions of pages. Okay. They don't use a burger menu on desktop view. They just have the 6 or 7 options in a top level. So I'm just gonna leave that there. I'm not necessarily going to say it's wrong or right, but it's something for you to think about. Which leads me on to the navigation hybrid. What on earth is the navigation hybrid, I hear you ask? Check this out. New Wolsey Theatre. Now, by default, you can see indicated in red, they have got 4 top level options. What's on, plan your visit, support us, and take part. So we can deduce that those are the key sections that they want to highlight and they want to encourage users to explore. But if you look on the right, they've also got the burger menu. And if I click it, it opens up and provides additional website links, which perhaps was seen as not important enough to place on screen by default, and a little summary description of what's included within those sections. Another example for you, Fabrica. So they only have three top level options by default: what's on, visit, and shop. They have a high profile donate button. And then again, they have this burger menu. So they're introducing a hierarchy. They're saying what's on, visit, and shop is the really, really important stuff. But there's lots of other stuff there if you're interested in perusing it. And if you click that on this instance, you can see it forms almost like a contents page of all of the content on their website. So that is the navigation hybrid, as I'm calling it, a combination of the default primary menu and the burger menu. Okay, how are we doing for time? A wee bit behind. Conversion. So this is really crucial. I'm going to talk in a moment about above the fold. So I'm going to explain it because I'm conscious not everybody might know what that is. Above the fold is the area of content that you see by default when you arrive at a website. So on the right, you can see the mobile fold, and on the left, you can see what's seen on a desktop or a laptop or a landscape tablet. So the fold is that dotted pink line. So everything above the fold is seen by default. No user effort is required to scroll down to what is below. Okay, so that's above the fold. It comes from newsstands back in the day where newspapers, broadsheet newspapers, were folded in half and put on the newsstand. All the important stories were placed at the top in an effort to try and get people to buy the papers. It's the same principle digitally. 57% of user attention stays above the fold. So I should clarify, this is on desktop, laptop, and tablet devices, not on mobile, where we're much more used to scrolling. This is a research study from the Nielsen Norman Group. So the takeaway here is get all your important stuff up above the fold, which leads me to quick tip number 9. Place important content at the top of your web pages, ideally above the fold if possible. So here is an example. This is Phoenix Arts in Leicester, an independent cinema, and they are promoting their Hamlet production, or rather the National Theatre's production of Hamlet. So if I put the fold in, it's that space there. You can see it is a dotted line, and everything above the fold, if I'm interested in this show, everything I need is right there, and the call to action, or CTA, is see show times and tickets. So I'm not having to scroll. I can go straight to the next step in that user journey. Okay, so that is above the fold and a call to action. Try and get all of your call to actions above the fold if you can, and ideally just have a single call to action on each page. So here is an example. Again, the Tate, you can see in actual fact, they've got two calls to action. They've got the book now button, which is the primary call to action. And then they've got this secondary free to members call to action. Why have they got two, and why are they styled differently? So the book now is their primary call to action. They want people to buy tickets for their Turner and Constable exhibition. Okay. But what if I'm not interested in that exhibition? What if I'm not ready to buy yet? There's a second call to action, which is about membership. So they're prompting me to look into membership as well. So there's an example of two calls to action, but notice they are styled differently. Okay, so something for you to think about. One other example, Compton Verney. So the homepage call to action you can see highlighted in red is plan your visit. Okay, nice and simple, nice economy to the design of that page. But notice at the top in the masthead, they've got this very high visible buy admission call to action. And that's in the masthead, which means it appears on every single page of their website. So that would work really, really well if you're trying to get people to do something specific across the whole website. So in their instance, they're looking to get people to visit. So by admission, call to action within the masthead. Okay, so your final quick tip. Don't worry if you haven't been taking notes on this. I'm going to have a recap very shortly. I'm going to run through it. And as I say, this presentation is going to be available on our website in about a week or so. So quick tip number 10, use clear buttons that are consistent. So I mentioned a few moments ago, we call them CTAs, or calls to action. So I'm going to ask you now to jump into the chat for one more time, please. two sets of buttons here. Which set of buttons would you say would be most effective on a single website? Most people are going for A, but the guys, button set B all look nice and different, don't they? They're using different fonts and different shapes and everything. I'm not going to persuade you, am I? You're too educated. Great to see. Thanks for taking part in that. It is button set A. Why is that? There's a consistency to it. Why is that important? When you're navigating around a website, if you're seeing consistent buttons and consistent stylings, it becomes almost second nature. You can navigate around the site and it's almost subconscious that these are buttons. There's no cognitive load again. I keep using that phrase. Whereas on button set B, if they were all over the place, I'd be thinking, is that clickable? Is that button? And you'd be surprised how many websites I come across in this role where I'm advising and consulting, where there are a wide range of different button styles. So try to keep your buttons consistent if you can. I've got an example. National Theatre. Above the fold, you can see they've got a single call to action, see what's on. That distinctive orange color, you can see that's also being applied to the search box. So they're using orange as a convention for anything that is clickable. And as you navigate through two or three pages, that becomes really, really front and center in your thinking. It's really, really clear and obvious what's clickable. So if we scroll down the page a little bit, these content highlights you can see have each got that lozenge shaped button rendered, admittedly at a slightly smaller size, but you can see it's the same typography, it's the same kind of format. Even on a performance page, you can see that each assisted performance has its own book ticket button. So it's really, really painless. It's frictionless, in fact, which is an industry term for good user experience. Frictionless meaning, it's very, very easy to use. You don't have to think, it's obvious. So you can guide people through your website, whatever you want them to do. And even on their footer, they're using hyperlinks rendered again in this orange. So it works really, really well. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to rapidly go through a recap. So we've had 5 chapters or sections today, and we've had 10 quick tips. So just to recap, brand and messaging. Make sure your brand is visually consistent across all of your marketing, online and offline. Quick tip number 2. Include a simple homepage statement explaining who you are and what you do. So if you don't currently have that, here's a really easy takeaway for you to place into your website as soon as you're able to. Chapter 2 is about fonts and colors. Quick tip number 3 was to choose fonts and colors with care. Think about legibility. Think about your audience in terms of the fonts and the colors that you're selecting. Quick tip number 4, you might remember the line length and the line height. Give generous space to the text on your website so it's easily legible and digested. Content and layout. Quick tip number 5, reduce the effort needed to understand your content. We did that little exercise, popping in paragraphs, popping in headings, popping in bullet lists, etc. That will make your website copy that much easier to absorb. Quick tip number 6, book in with Monica to get content noticed in AI overviews. There she is, waiting for your call. Navigation. Quick tip number 7, reduce navigation to focus on what is really important. So 5 to 7 top-level navigation options is your sweet spot. Consider using a burger menu if there's other options that you really, really need to give prominence to. And quick tip number 8, navigation labels should be clear, familiar, and concise. Don't use jargon. Don't use internal phrases that your audience will not be familiar with. Finally, conversion. Quick tip number 9, place important content at the top of your pages. So we looked at the below the fold and above the fold, particularly calls to action. And quick tip number 10, use clear buttons that are styled consistently. So what I would really like to do at this point in the presentation is to provide you with some kind of visual that you can use as a benchmark, which encompasses all of these tips. I can't do that because you're all different. Some of you are individual practitioners. Some of you are small organizations. Some of you may be from large organizations. You're representing different art forms. Your audiences are all different. So it's very, very difficult for me to do that. But what I can do is just give you an example of what you shouldn't do. Lingscars.com. So this is an example of a website which breaks all the conventions and all the thinking around good website design in terms of brand and messaging, fonts and colors, um, conversion, calls to action, above the fold. Some of you are commenting in the chat. I have to say, I love it, Holly. I know that I love it too, but it's not going to work for you. So yeah, it's often held up in web design and user experience tutorials as a case study of what you shouldn't do. So I just want to leave that with you. Okay, did you know that we have a podcast at the Digital Culture Network? We do. If any of you like listening to podcasts, please subscribe through your favorite podcast channels. We've got two really, really excellent podcasts that have just launched. One is Monica Thomas, The Impact of AI on Website Visibility and Search. We touched on that earlier. And my buddy for today, James Akers, Streamlining Your Cultural Data. So do sign up for our podcasts. We've got a couple of fantastic webinars coming up, two big hitters on the team. My chess nemesis, Dean Shaw, social media content without the cringe, storytelling for arts and culture. That's on the 12th of March. Do sign up through our website for that. And similarly, in April on the 28th, Once Upon a Pixel, the magic behind digital tracking with our very own James Akers. If you want to get in touch with us, you're very welcome to do so. We would love to hear from you. You can do so through our website, digitalculturenetwork.org.uk. Drop us an email, contact us through our social channels or through the aforementioned podcast. That pretty much concludes the presentation. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes for Q&A. There we go. James, I feel exhausted after that.
You did really well. That's it. Have a glug of squash.
Mm.
Reset yourself.
Gotta have a glug of that week's squash.
Thanks for that. And Andy was there plugging everybody but himself. So if you do want support in any of this that Andy's talked through today, he's the man to speak to, and he's very lovely, as you've just seen.
I
So
forgot to mention that. Yeah, I would love to speak to any of you who want to have a conversation about any of the points. Apologies if you've been putting comments in the chat that I haven't looked at. Go to the website, fill in the form, and I'll happily have a conversation with you.
brilliant. Yeah. So as Andy said, every website is different, every organization and practitioner is very different and what you're trying to achieve. So on that, I'm just going to jump straight in with some of these questions. So
Okay.
first, around that kind of thing about how different we are is from Holly about what is a good website conversion rate, and to do a website audit, what analytics should we look at? I know this is I'm going to
This
pick
is
up some of this
James.
answers.
Why don't you field that?
I'll field that. That's my specialist area, Holly. So
Yeah.
if you do need help with those kind of things, speak to me.
Oh, I
Um,
thought you were going to give Holly an answer right now.
I am. I'm just gonna. I am. Calm down.
Sorry.
So yeah, e-commerce. If it's an e-commerce and shop, it's usually around 2 to 3% conversion rate. So speak to Catherine, our e-commerce tech champion, if it is that. If it's a cultural organization website, you're all different. You're all trying to do different things. So there isn't a standard conversion rate, and what you offer can be very different. So a theatre, for example, can offer venue hire as well as ticket sales, as well as wanting donations and volunteer inquiries. So making sure that you're tracking all those different objectives is the first point of any analytics and reviewing you want to do. And if it's a content audit about a website audit and it's the different content you want to look at, it's categorizing the different bits of content you have. So you might look at engagement rate for some long form content because you want to see how long people are spending consuming that content. But if it's certain pages on your site which you want to move people through quickly, you want them to be on there less time. So there are various different metrics for different objectives, but come and speak to me and we can do the audit together.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a few questions from Andrew and Melanie about sliding banners, so carousels on websites. I don't think
Yeah.
you really mentioned that. What's your thoughts on carousels? Are they a good or a bad thing?
Well, I understand why they're popular. They allow you to present multiple messages, multiple marketing messages, etc. So they are popular. Um, I personally don't like them, and the reason for that is statistics show that people will see the first slide and they will scroll down before the second slide has even been seen. So you might be spending a lot of time and effort, um, creating these fantastic visual slides on your website. But in actual fact, look at your statistics. People tend not to look at them. So yeah, they've fallen out of favor in recent years. I still see them all the time. And I'm guilty of having in my agency days of overseeing websites with carousels, as they were called in those days. But yeah, I would say if you've got a key message, have it by default, and then have a hierarchy um, deeper in the page. It's better to have a deeper page with all of your messaging available to view by scrolling rather than people passively waiting for slides to appear. So I would ditch them.
Yeah. And there is that internal conversation, isn't it? Because every
Yeah,
different part of your organization wants to be on the homepage, but it's taking people on a journey, isn't it? Of first introducing what you offer and who you are, and then the different
yeah,
parts of that in different ways.
yeah,
And I think Ollie mentioned it as one of his questions was around if you want to define what your homepage hero copy should be, looking at your mission statement is a good starting point to pull that out and then have that
yeah.
as your, why you exist. If people are, it's the first time on your website, they need to understand what it is you offer.
Yeah, and just on that, actually, if you look, I mean, some of the examples in this presentation, like the British Museum and the Tate Gallery, obviously they're large organizations. They've got the benefits of having a large team, etc. You notice that they very, very rarely have carousels and sliders on their website. That's because they find that they're kind of completely ineffective. So yeah, use the larger sites maybe as a benchmark of what is kind of currently considered best practice.
Nice, very good. Um, and looking at the stuff that you showed around eye tracking and things like that, there are tools that you can use now, aren't they, that can see where people can click and do heat maps on.
There are things like some of the popular ones are things like Hotjar and Crazy Egg. So they will allow you to get some insight into how people are using the website. That's more to do with clicks, however, and scroll depths rather than retinal tracking. There are specialist companies who will, if you've got the budget, who will do retinal tracking user testing for you. But again, the stuff that Jakob Nielsen has kind of pioneered, there's lots of really, really good articles on his website around this topic, and it just helps to inform how you compose and how you format your content on your web pages.
Yeah, and that's what Joel's question was around, was that how do you do eye tracking with a mobile device? So I imagine those.
Yeah, there are studies. I think on the example I gave, it was desktop, but there are eye tracking studies for mobile. It works in exactly the same way. So there would be, I mean, if John wants to send me an email, I can send him some resources, pointing him in the right direction.
So yeah, so in the chat, just going to respond to everybody. So Hotjar is a platform that allows you to do screen recording and heat maps. There is one called Microsoft Clarity, which is a free version. So I'd recommend checking that out if you want. And we can put a link in the show notes for these things as well.
Yeah,
Let's just have a look at
definitely.
those questions. So Mia was asking about if you were new to everything and brand new to setting things yourself up online
Yeah.
and marketing everything, is building a website the first thing you should do? Or should you build your social media presence first? What are the steps you should take?
Well, that's really interesting. I tend to see websites still very much as the hub of digital activity, just because most people are online, whereas not everybody is necessarily on social media channels. It's all down really to what you're looking to achieve and who your audience is. At the start of the presentation, I flagged up Ollie and Jack. They would be two great people for you to have a conversation with before you even thought about, you know, launching an Instagram, channel or a website, because the foundational stuff around, strategy and audience is really, really key. And that really defines everything that you do from a promotional point of view. So by all means, get in touch with me. We can have a chat with that in more detail. But yeah, I would reach out to Ollie also.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much, Andy. I think we'll leave it there for the questions, but if there's
Okay.
anything else, we'll add it to the show notes. And
Yeah, I think I will get a list of questions that have been asked, and I'll respond to those. And as you say, they'll be on the page, won't they, in the Knowledge Hub?
there you go. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.